Welcome to the Coach 'em Up podcast. My name is Tim Riley. Zach Zillner is not with us today. Before I introduce our absolutely wonderful guest, there are some things that, of course, we must discuss. I was just at the NFL Combine, and all week I had people approach me. You know what they would say? They would say, Tim, I'm a subscriber. Whew! Never in my life have I felt more proud. I mean, I was proud of how the athletes did. I was more proud of the fact that people would come up to me and proudly say they are subscribed to the channel. So that leads me to my next point. There are, in fact, two types of people on planet Earth. There are non-subscribers and there are subscribers. If you're a subscriber, you get to claim that. You can make it your license plate. You are subscribed. You have made it. For everybody else who is unsubscribed, you can join that team. You don't have to keep living this way. Make me, your friends and family proud. Hit the subscribe button. It's free to you. It helps us out a ton, and it helps me bring on absolutely amazing guests like Dr. Emily Dow. Emily.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hi, Tim. I'm good. How are you?
I'm saying how you doing like we haven't been hanging out literally all day long. I got to say, it's been such a treat getting to hang out with you all day.
Yes.
I've kind of given her the grand tour, at least of the South Congress side of Austin, Texas. We went to Two Hands. Mm-hmm. I absolutely inhaled some steak and eggs and hash browns. Yeah. What'd you get? Breakfast burrito?
Devoured a breakfast burrito.
Yes, you did.
Burrito's
indeed.
always the move.
Yeah. Especially in Texas, the breakfast burrito, it's hard to not choose that. And then we went over to my gym. Mm-hmm. She got to see it, currently under construction. What do you think?
I think it has, it's got a lot of potential. It's going to be beautiful. I can tell.
I am just going to put it out into the world that I am now actively trying to recruit her to come and be a registered dietitian and coach at my gym. So we've got a long way to go, but I am working on her. In the comment section, if you think Emily should work at this gym, go ahead and let us know. All right, Emily, I've talked enough. I've been following you for a while now, and I got with you. I was buying stock low. I bought stock low, dude, and it's starting to rise, and it's very easy to understand why. Your content is phenomenal, and you take incredibly complex nutrition topics and explain them in a way that gives people enough information to understand what is going on, but you're also not dumbing anything down. It's very refreshing. All done from the front seat of her Bronco. Yeah. So, I know who you are. I've been following you for quite some time. For the people who don't know who you are and how you got to where you're at today, give us the story.
Okay. Yeah, that's a loaded question. If this is our first encounter, my name is Dr. Emily Dow. Don't call me doctor. It's been a weird thing. Because I'm not a medical doctor specifically, and that can get confusing for people. But I have my PhD in exercise and nutritional sciences, kind of a hybridized program, kind of a hybridized person in many ways. I'm a registered dietitian, kind of specializing more in the sports performance side of things and or just like the relationship between exercise and nutrition. And then I also have my CSCS. So I do have a little bit of a background in the strength and conditioning side too. Yeah,
by background, she means she's coached for over 8 years. So no big deal.
Correct.
Which is insane because she's just an absolute stud of a person, someone this decorated. She's also, did you mention that you're a professor at the University of Arizona?
I didn't mention
I don't think you did. She's a professor at the University of Arizona as well. And you're 27 years old. Mm-hmm. God damn it. I literally, dude, I didn't get sober until that age. So you're crushing it, dude. All right. So, with your expertise, I have a question, and it's pressing, and I think anyone who's listened to this show before knows my opinion. Are carbs a performance-enhancing drug?
The drug piece is obviously a little bit iffy. I don't know if I should say that from a professional standpoint, but they are performance-enhancing 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes like news to the public just because of how things are talked about on social media and with sort of the way carbs were vilified so much recently. Mm-hmm. But in the performance space, that really hasn't ever been in question. I think most dietitians are very familiar with that. And I think many athletes are as well. It's just something that's difficult for a lot of folks to prioritize, I think.
Yeah. I want to dig into that topic too, because there are a lot of layers around that reality that I don't think people quite understand, or maybe don't have all of the elements to actually use that advantageously.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even know where to start. Like, I think like amount is probably a good place. And then let's get into like timing. And then also I've found that in certain populations, it's more difficult to have that conversation, particularly, but not always, with female athletes.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we talk about carbs and enhancing performance, can you tell me a little bit around like what kind of carbs and what amounts, and then take me through everything I would need to know to maximize that?
Yeah, so I think maybe the easiest or most logical place to start is just kind of thinking about like the role overall that carbs play in the diet when you're kind of thinking about how calories are allocated. Because broadly speaking, calories are our source of energy. They're the only source of energy. Calories are a unit of energy. And I think that aspect really gets forgotten a lot. And carbs obviously are one piece where the three macronutrients all sort of aggregate together to form our total caloric intake. And we do a great job in the field at this point talking about protein and its importance in performance, in recovery, and adaptations. That's obviously going to make up a segment of those calories. The rest we get to divide between fats and carbs. And you know, there's obviously a role for fats as well. And I don't think it's lost on anyone that they're important for like hormonal function, and for fats are essential. They're essential fatty acids that we have to get through the diet because our body can't synthesize them. But really carbs make up the rest. And carbs are non-essential in the sense that we don't have to consume them in the diet, but that is because they're so essential. And that's kind of the piece that I think also gets lost a lot is the—
What do you mean by that?
So we don't have to consume carbs because our body has the ability to synthesize them from non-carbohydrate sources. So from fats, from proteins. And
this is the you know, effectively what we're talking about when we're talking about a ketogenic diet, correct?
Yes, exactly. So ketosis is one version of this. Basically, gluconeogenesis is the process of generating glucose, carbohydrates from non-glucose sources, from non-carbohydrate sources. And really, that's a secondary mechanism that exists in our physiology because carbohydrates are so essential, specifically for certain tissues. So the brain primarily uses carbohydrates. Red blood cells can only use carbohydrates as an energy source because they lack their own mitochondria. That's a fun fact for you. So there are certain tissues that rely exclusively on glucose as a fuel source. And because that is a reality, and because carbs maybe aren't always available, we have these mechanisms in place to kind of fall back on, where carbs will be synthesized from non-carb sources. And I've seen that used as an argument to say, well, then why do I need to consume them? But I think my pushback on that is, well, why wouldn't you consume them, given that's the reason that those processes exist, and given the fact that you're going to end up— your body is going to figure out a way to produce them anyway. So it's really just a more efficient means to the same end in that sense. So that's kind of like the overarching role that carbs play, I guess, in the diet. But specifically for people who care about training, and I hesitate to say athletes because I know sometimes people have a hard time like classifying themselves that way.
Sure.
But people like myself, for example, I care about training, I care about performance, but we've talked about my mediocrity in that area. The fact that I don't care, that's fine with me. But I obviously still care about getting the most of out of my training.
Yeah.
And I think most people who train do.
Yes.
That's why we do it.
100%.
Carbs are going to play a really large role in that. And it makes sense to designate a good portion of your diet to that because it has such an integral role in performance, as opposed to fats, which play their own role, but they're not as directly productive towards training, especially in the short term, which we can talk about with like the timing and stuff too.
Yeah. In terms of like, you know, like what should my carb intake look like? You know?
Yeah.
Like like for me, who's 235 pounds, right? Like definitely my carb intake is going to look a lot different from yours.
Yeah.
Right. Are there like general guidelines or recommendations if the goal is performing well, either whether that be lifting weights or, an athletic endeavor?
Yeah, there are general recommendations. I would say for active people, like 50% of your calories should probably be coming from carbs.
Yeah.
And that sort of accounts for the individual differences in caloric needs and size, for example, like the difference between you and me, especially. So, and there are ways to kind of convert that into like grams per kilogram equivalents as well. And it really then depends on your sport and how intense your training looks. And are you training twice a day? Like, is it a game day situation? Are you sort of carb loading, for lack of a better term, for a race or something? And so those ranges will vary a little bit, but I do think generally people underestimate how many they should be consuming. Especially a lot of the women that I work with are definitely clocking less than 200 grams a day. And I would say pretty much every woman should probably be above that.
Wow.
With men probably double in most cases. But again, that depends. And there's a little bit of like, you can individualize to some extent. If you're not someone who loves carbs, like you can get away with a little bit less. But generally speaking, I think people avoid them because they think they should. And in reality, you should probably be consuming more if you want to train hard.
There's so many things in there I want to dig into. One, well, I'll bring up the protein conversation later, but you mentioned carb loading, and which precipitates us into the conversation around timing. So, it's my understanding that it's like, okay, like I probably want to get carbed up pre and post workout, but I also, depending on what I'm doing, I may need an intra workout. And then if I'm preparing for like a big event, the days leading up to, I probably want to load up carbs. So like there's a lot going on. And I think that there are like specific use cases for all of those things.
Yeah.
Could you give me just like, what are like the big important bullet points here surrounding like timing, intake, and why it's important?
Yeah. So I think when we're talking about how carbs affect training, I think the biggest piece is thinking about glycogen and optimizing glycogen storage, optimizing repletion of glycogen stores, because the unique thing about carbohydrates and how they fuel performance is that they're stored locally within the muscle tissues that will then use them as glycogen, as well as in the liver to some extent. Just to kind of conceptualize this, those stores are obviously limited, unlike fat stores, for example, which you can continue accumulating. Glycogen, generally in the muscle, we all have probably about 500 grams if we're walking around like fully saturated, and that obviously varies depending on size. In the liver, we've got like...
Shout out being fully saturated. You know what I mean? Let's fucking
Full
go.
saturation.
Full saturation is the goal.
Is always the goal.
Yeah, subscribed and fully saturated. Let's
Fully
go.
saturated. I love that so much.
Yeah,
it's going to be...
That's a shirt.
Branded. Trademark. I'm claiming it. Even though you said it. So where was I even at? In the liver, we store about 100 grams. And then like the free glucose circulating in our bloodstream is only like 5 grams at a time, generally speaking.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it's way less than you would expect. So we obviously store carbohydrates locally, and that's unique because that's a much faster route of generating ATP. It can be used very, very quickly compared to if we're using fatty acids, it's a much slower process, which is why that comes into play. And fat oxidation is also something we can talk about when you're in that lower intensity, more sustained exercise context. But when you're doing something like a strength training session, especially depending on the duration, you are depleting glycogen stores. That's primarily what's being used during that type of exercise, because you're relying on those first couple of energy systems and not really tapping into fat oxidation. So for that reason, it's often stated that, okay, well, your glycogen stores aren't fully depleted during a normal training session. Usually if you're training for like an hour, you're maybe at like 40 to 60% depletion by the end of it. However, performance starts to degrade around there. So you're still not going to be getting quite as much out of what you're doing at the end of that session for that reason. And beyond that, glycogen depletion isn't uniform. I talk about this all the time. you can fully deplete certain muscles and then not deplete others. So that 40 to 60% is an aggregate, but your calves could be 100% depleted. And then another muscle could be like 30% depleted.
So if my calves are looking unremarkable, some of you will get that reference. I'm going to say that they are just simply not fully saturated and merely depleted at the moment.
All.
Yeah, that's
They're
all.
Just flat.
Yeah, oh my God. I don't know if anyone if you're watching this at home, my microphone just fell all the way off.
It's also not fully saturated.
It's not. That's the problem. Yeah. Okay, so you can have, I actually, which makes sense, because if it is stored locally and I'm taking, let's say 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of calf raises to failure, then those stores are getting utilized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Disproportionately to other muscle groups.
Okay.
So yeah, depending on what you're training, oftentimes this is a factor when you're kind of noticing that you're fatiguing or sort of fading towards the end of a session. A lot of the time introducing carbs during can help with that, can help overcome that. That's not to say it's necessary. Like in the context of a 60 to 90 minute lift, it's not necessary to consume intra-workout carbs. But if you can, it'll probably feel a little bit better.
You know what my preference is?
What's your preference?
A Mexican Coke.
Oh, I should have guessed that.
I did.
We had a whole conversation about this addiction.
I've talked a lot about Mexican Coke today with her.
Yes.
But and even it doesn't even have to. So for those of you who may not know, a Mexican Coke is just a bottled Coke. It's just Coke.
Glass bottle.
In a glass bottle. Correct. Yes. Thank you. That is an important detail. It inexplicably tastes different and better. I don't know if that's placebo, but placebo is real, and I choose to believe that it is a superior solution.
I think they use I don't know this. Fact check this. I think they use a different type of sugar.
I think it's cane sugar.
I think it's cane sugar.
Yes.
That's the difference.
So absolutely, highly recommend 10 out of 10 intra workout, a Mexican Coke. But if I don't have access to that, that will be, at C4 Performance Center, we have just a fridge and it has like ginger ale or like a Dr. Pepper. And if I'm having like a 2-hour long workout, which I try to avoid, but sometimes, hey, any of you guys listening and watching, you got to get it in when you can. So sometimes it's full sprint session followed by full, almost full lower body lift. And it takes 2 hours, dude. And I get, done with act 1 of that and I'm fucking cooked.
Yeah. And that's when it's particularly important, is when you're kind of stacking multiple sessions either back to back or even within the same day like that.
The Coach 'em Up podcast has partnered with OVR. In the world of athletic performance testing, OVR has truly changed the game. From their timing gates, vertical jump testing units, and their velocity-based tracking systems, they are simple, easy to use, reliable, precise, and check this out, affordable. I'm such a big believer in OVR. I've partnered with them in my competition Apex, and they are the official timing gate system of the Fast 40 event. Finally, a tracking device company that is accessible to everyone. They even have an app where you can track, log, and see your results in real time. If you're not testing, then you're just guessing. Click the link in the show notes and gamify your training. Can you tell me a little bit about the carb loading concept? Because I particularly like in the endurance community, that's something that's discussed and employed frequently. But my question is isn't there only so much you can store? You know what I mean? Yeah. So at a certain point.
There is. Yeah, there are limits because your muscle capacity, your liver capacity is only so large. And the more trained you are, you can kind of expand that capacity. So endurance athletes can sometimes store 600 to 800 grams of carbs in their glycogen stores.
Damn.
Yeah, it can become quite impressive.
Does muscle tissue size impact that as well? I'm assuming, right? Okay.
Absolutely. It gives you more for lack of a better term, surface area to sort of soak all of that up. That's the best visual I can come up with, I suppose. But the carb loading concept, I think it's sometimes people overcomplicate it, like with many things. It's important to eat enough carbs over maybe the couple days before a big event so that you can fully saturate your glycogen stores. And that's really what you're aiming to do. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this crazy concerted effort over multiple days. And I think actually a lot of people get themselves in trouble with that, especially if they're consuming all these crazy foods that they're not super accustomed to consuming, especially before a high intensity event where you're going to be experiencing all sort of GI stuff, all sorts of GI stuff, in addition to nerves and like adrenaline running rampant. And I think a lot of the time that can contribute to GI issues during those sorts of things.
Got it.
So it's definitely better to at least stick with foods that you know you tolerate well in that particular window.
Right. It's like you never eat like, chicken Alfredo. And then it's like the night before a marathon, you're like, you know what?
The fact
I am going to
Alfredo.
eat that double order of chicken Alfredo for the carbs, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. This is a thing that I have. Fettuccine Alfredo specifically is like always the thing that comes to mind for people when you talk about carbs.
Yeah.
And it's so
because it's
funny.
fucking delicious.
It's delicious. I no hate. Shout out Fettuccine Alfredo. I love pasta in all variations. I'm not slandering Fettuccine Alfredo, to be clear.
Yeah.
But if you were to look at the caloric contributions in Fettuccine Alfredo, fats are going to make up a big chunk of that.
Yeah.
And that is really not going to be tolerated well in an exercise context. So it's very low on the list of like best case scenario for something that you're consuming for performance advantage. Because you got to consider the GI tract when you're talking about those things too.
So I want to get into that actually a little later on. I just want to fully explore this carb conversation because, okay, there is at a certain point where it's like, if you're fully saturated, you're fully saturated. Full stop. Right? And which, by the way, when you guys see me at Apex here, I don't even know, this podcast may or may not be out, but I hope everyone is fully saturated before they begin because it is a long day.
Everyone better be.
You better be fully saturated. So that makes me kind of, I don't know if question is the right word, but at least want to kick around the idea around like, pre-workout carbs immediately. You know what I mean? Because like in my mind up until this point, and this is something I still do, like if I can get some quick carbs before a lift, I will. But it's not like I'm trust me, a problem I don't have is under consuming carbohydrates.
Me too.
Right? Yes. So it makes me wonder, it's like, am I just like pouring water onto a cup that's already full? Like what's the use case for that for me?
Well, my argument would be in that setting, because it's how do you know is the question. Like how do you know how full your glycogen stores are at any given point in time?
Right.
You can't measure that yourself. You can't necessarily easily, maybe some people are very in tune with their body and can suss that out, but I certainly can't.
I'm definitely fully saturated.
Definitely, I feel fully saturated and it feels like power. And God, I keep distracting myself with these things. So it's difficult to know, but I would say my argument for still consuming carbs beforehand is what better time of day to consume the majority of your carbs than stacking them around your training sessions. Because if you're going to attempt to walk around fully saturated, you hope that your daily carb intake is already high enough to support that. And so, of course, you want to be fully saturated going into your session. But if you're going to be consuming a lot of carbs that day to ensure that that's the case on an ongoing basis, the most effective time to block those is before and after training.
Yeah.
And there's a secondary piece to that where part of the reason that consuming carbs immediately before and even during, when that's relevant to certain types of exercise, is to actually preserve glycogen. Because if you have glucose in circulation, and again, that amount is really limited, but if you have it in circulation or you're consuming it, it can be directly used, then you don't have to tap into glycogen immediately and you can conserve that for later on. And that's especially what you're trying to accomplish when you're consuming intra-workout carbs. And then especially in like the long distance endurance context, is you're essentially constantly turning over those 5 grams that are in circulation so that you don't have to tap into glycogen.
Got it.
That's kind of the idea, is to preserve that.
So when I have a client who I'm training for maybe like the first or second time ever, whom I've told, please make sure you consume something before this workout. And then we get 30 minutes in and they are ghost white and they need to lay down. And I ask them, Sarah, did you eat today? And she goes, mm-mm. And I say, it's okay, lay down. I'm going to go get you an apple juice.
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with, right?
Yes.
So blood sugar has fully dropped. She's not fully saturated. Sarah is blew it, okay?
Yes.
She is not nearly saturated enough. And then, that's why it's helpful for me to go and get her an apple juice and sort of give her 5 minutes and sort of allow her to be revived.
Yeah, allow her to feel the power surging. Yeah, apple juice is that's a good example too, because like your Mexican Coke, which my only caveat with that is like the carbonation might be questionable for some people. People can tolerate that. Some can, some can't. Same thing with like carbonated energy drinks. Couldn't be me. I would probably vomit.
Really?
While exercise, yes. But I'm glad that's not the case for you. I just know better than to do a Mexican Coke during a session.
Too bubbly.
However, like juice is a really solid option. I also love, and I think you've had someone else recommend this probably. Coconut water is a great one.
Yeah, John Heck. Shout out John.
Because of the potassium. That's the other piece. Is a lot of people underconsume potassium, and that contributes to like electrolyte imbalances as well, because a lot of folks know about sodium but not so much about potassium.
Right. And then everyone is like slamming these like basically quote unquote electrolyte products, and it's just salt. And some people maybe are under consuming sodium. The majority of unlikely though, right?
Yes, it's unlikely. Now, I've been in Austin for less than 24 hours and I've sweat enough that maybe that is the case more often here. But yeah, most people are definitely, in terms of ratios, over consuming the sodium, under consuming the potassium. So coconut water is a great option because it has some sugar and it also has a lot of potassium. So my usual go-to personally is like, I think it's Body Armor that's made with coconut water. And so, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Check the potassium content on those. It's really good. And I recommend them to athletes actually all the time.
Okay.
Because it's got great electrolyte content and it's also got a good bit of sugar. You don't want to get the sugar-free ones, obviously, for this context. But that's the kind of thing that I think works really well for either pre or intra-workout.
You know what? Something just popped into my mind. I saw a clip and it was one of those things that I'm scrolling through my For You page and I heard it and I'm like, I don't know if that sounds real or not. But someone on my Instagram feed said when consuming an intra carbohydrate option, if you can find something that is both fructose and glucose. Can you tell me a little bit more? So this is a thing.
That's legit.
Okay, so why do I want to consume both fructose and glucose? How does that work?
Yeah, so I will, quick caveat, that's definitely not something that I think everyone needs to like worry about. Like,
right.
Don't overthink these things. Like carbs are...
So I don't have to mix my Mexican Coke and apple juice into one concoction.
I would not necessarily go there. That would be an interesting flavor profile.
Yeah.
To each their own. And I'm trying to think, because the Mexican Coke won't have high fructose corn syrup, but some sodas would, and that would obviously contribute at least the fructose piece. But a lot of sports nutrition products leverage this. And the reason for it is because glucose and fructose can utilize different transporters. And so you can actually kind of get not necessarily twice as much exactly, but you can get more out of a certain quantity of carbs if it's split between those two transporters in the small intestine than if you're only able to leverage one. So that is very legitimate. I believe like so many are formulated that way. Like a lot of the gels, a lot of the like the carb mixes. I think Gatorade actually is formulated that way too. That's some of like the really early sports drink research that kind of pointed to that.
Very cool. And then, so we've talked pre, we've talked intra, and then post. So as, someone who is, a meathead at heart, that was my introduction to utilizing carbs, or at least what I assumed was a way to utilize carbs to get the most out of training, to basically begin the recovery process, right? For lack of a better explanation. But can you tell me a little bit around mechanistically why carbs immediately post-workout are a good thing and necessary.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're pretty much on it in terms of the rationale and again, it gets back to glycogen. So we're essentially trying to replenish what was lost when we're consuming those carbs afterwards. And I do think sometimes like the timeline is a little bit overstated. It's definitely not worth panicking if like within an hour you can't get a certain
because that kind of falls into the thought, the same thing with protein, where it's like that's what I grew up. It's like you have the golden hour, you know, post workout.
Yeah.
Is there legitimacy in that?
It's not, there's not some kind of magical window or anything like that. But I mean, with protein, there's an argument to be made for you want to have a certain number of like stimuli for muscle protein synthesis across a day. So you also don't want to have like only 1 or 2 doses that are sort of like contributing to all of your protein. So it makes sense
to just get it started sooner.
Exactly.
And set you up for more later.
Yeah. Okay. And a similar argument to like the carb thing that I said about pre-workouts or about pre-workout carbs is that's kind of the best time to be consuming them anyway in terms of your entire day. But essentially you're replenishing glycogen, and there's also a little bit of a complementary effect between carbs and protein, where when you consume them alongside one another, muscle protein synthesis is optimized and glycogen repletion is optimized. So those two alongside one another is really kind of like the magic when it comes to replenishing stores as quickly as possible and stimulating muscle protein synthesis as efficiently as possible. But again, it doesn't have to be like in this super narrow window. I usually say within like 2 hours, if you can get a good mixed meal in, and you don't even have to avoid fats or fiber, which it's also worth thinking about fiber with the carb timing thing. You don't need to avoid them in that window because it's okay if it takes a little longer to digest and to utilize. But you also don't need to emphasize them because they're not necessarily like helping you in that context.
Because fiber maxing is back, baby.
It's back.
It is so back.
Is cool again.
Protein, so protein has been the king, and I swear to God, the fucking fitness landscape is a hellscape. So for the longest time, it's like, and by the way, this is not a bad thing, right? Like people prioritize your protein. That's generally good advice.
100%.
Right? But I don't know, man. It all just feels like a grift at some point. Because now it's like I see the pendulum swinging, which I think there is some common sense to this, where it's like, well, most of you are probably over consuming protein, which by the way, not a bad thing, right? But relative to, how your body could be utilizing other caloric, sources of calories.
Yeah.
You might argue that you could lower the protein intake and up the carb intake.
Yes.
And right?
Yes. And that's something that I see all the time with male athletes, especially. I mean, everybody, but that's very much a trend I've seen where because of all of the language around protein and how emphasized that tends to be, especially in its marketing towards males who are interested in training. I've had even like high school athletes come to me with their like food recalls, and they are consuming way more protein than they need and not nearly enough carbs.
Yeah.
And because protein is also so satiating, it also kind of like caps how many calories you can consume. And you'll have like a high school football player that's trying to put on mass, and he's consuming so much protein that at a certain point, he's not getting any more out of.
Yeah.
And he's displacing calories that could have come from carbohydrates, which would have been more productive to his training at that point.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of be conscious about really calories are a budget to work with. And depending on the context, you have to be conscious of how you're allocating different items within that budget.
When it comes to carbs, I've found that, and this actually goes into another point I want to talk to you about people actually not eating enough. But we'll put a pin in that for now.
Hold. Okay.
So more times than I can count, have been able to convince athletes to up their carb intake, and they see immediate performance gains. Right. Yeah. They recover better. Their workouts feel better. They're able to move more weight faster. Like they're just performing better, full stop. It can be really hard to move people off into that, and to convince people that it's worth trying, particularly if they are already like subscribed to a certain diet. And then, it's not all, but certainly the majority of those instances are women, my female athletes, that really struggle with the concept that more carbs, it does not equal more body fat, and that it's going to equal performance, and that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had to navigate that conversation once or twice. What is a way that you can approach that conversation in a way that's tactful and thoughtful and helpful and caring while also getting the information across?
Yeah. And I think that's a conversation I've had, I'm not kidding, hundreds of times at this point. And that's also like something that I leverage. Like I really do understand that fear. I see it all the time. It's legitimate fear sometimes coming from these women who've been told, over and over again, like you need to watch your carb intake and you need to watch your calorie intake, and not realizing that that's actually limiting their potential to progress in their specific fitness pursuits tremendously. And the way that I kind of explain it is the eating more piece, and the fact that, if we consistently provide your body with the resources that it actually needs to tolerate this amount of training, to recover well, to adapt well, it's also going to, because of those adaptations, like learn to expect it and learn to work with those fuel sources more efficiently. So your metabolism is sort of like a fire, essentially, that if you're adding fuel to it, it's going to burn hotter and brighter. And so it's a lot of the time, truthfully, they have to see it for themselves. And there's a good bit of trust involved. I very slowly introduce increased calories, increased carbs. And I'm like, just pay attention. Just pay attention to how you feel. Watch the fact that you're not all of a sudden gaining all this body fat. If anything, a lot of the time they see improvements in body composition because they can train harder and they can get more out of their training and they feel better. And so getting some buy-in usually takes like, okay, we've made this increase. I'm seeing that it's actually benefiting me. I'm seeing that it's safe and that it's not scary. And then it's a lot easier to continue that process. But with the carbs, I think women are very good at working really hard when it comes to training. I'm sure you've seen that in your
100%.
Clients. They want to do things right. They have no problem. Like every female client I've ever worked with is like, should I be doing more? Can I add a cardio session? Can I add another lift? Can I do 6 days a week?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's pump the brakes and like, let's make these 4 days really awesome first.
Yeah.
And so the work isn't the problem, but I try to leverage the fact that like, hey, you're working really hard in the gym. Don't you want to get out of it what you're seeking to get out of it? Because we're going to need resources on board to do that.
Yeah.
And also, when we introduce those resources, you can train harder, you can expend more energy during those training sessions. It ends up offsetting a lot of the things that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
And typically, once they feel it for themselves, it starts to kind of unravel that piece.
I have a story. So, shout out Kenzie Beckham. I love her so much. She was one of my first high school athletes that I ever coached and trained, and had the opportunity to help her through her junior and senior year until she left, and eventually went and played 4 years at ECU for volleyball. When I got her, now this girl, stud, great athlete, obviously getting recruited to play D1 volleyball. She was a multi-sport athlete her whole life, and we're working hard, right? She's getting ready for college. And I remember on day one asking her like, hey, so like take me through your food schedule. Like what do things look like for you on average on a daily basis? And she goes through it. And it's like 2 meals maximum. Yeah. The girl is working, going to school, training hard with me, doing volleyball practice 4 days a week. And I don't know if anyone knows about, I'm sure plenty of people know, but many of you may not know, the expectation from these select volleyball teams for high school women on the weekends is insane. It's 2 days and they'll play 5 matches a day.
Yeah.
Just absurd. So she's wildly under eating. And she was like the best case scenario because she was one of those people like you talked to. If I was like jump, she would say how high. I was like, look, we got to up your calories. We got to up your carbs. I shit you not. She had this transformation where she like lost 7 pounds of body fat. added 6 pounds of muscle and was the most athletic version of herself in 10 weeks. And it was tremendous to watch. And then in real time, she was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was so scared, right? Of eating more.
Yeah.
And that is one example of many examples. And I've had that happen with men as well. It is unfortunately predominantly women who I've had that experience with. And it's like you alluded to, it's because of the fear of eating more and eating more carbs in particular. I think one thing that's helpful is you explained a little bit about the process of the way our metabolism adjusts to more calories. Could you just dig into that a little bit? So if you were going to explain it to me, like I was Kinsey, right? And I'm on the precipice of like, I want to believe you, but like, I don't though, you know?
Yeah.
Tell me, like, how is taking my caloric intake from 1,200 calories a day to 1,600 not going to have a negative impact on my weight or my size or whatever it is I'm afraid of, and how it's going to have a positive impact on my performance and ultimately body composition and how I feel and general sense of well-being?
Yeah. Well, okay, there's so many things that I can kind of dive into to justify that adjustment. Firstly, I think it's important to kind of explore like what is the context when we're eating 1,200 calories, and that's common, unfortunately, and
especially
it's not
for women.
like,
why is that the number?
I don't know. I honestly
what the
have
fuck
no
happened?
idea.
Why?
I think at some point that was communicated. Like this is dieting calories.
Yes, if you're hitting 1,200, you're not dead.
Yeah,
right.
But you're almost dead.
You're
feeling like
yeah, exactly.
And
you will lose weight. Yeah,
like, it sucks, and you're angry, and you're stressed, and your physiology is stressed.
What's fascinating to me too is people. I don't know how many people who claim to do that actually are. So there's a conversation there. But how many people are under consuming and their body composition is staying the same?
Yeah. And it speaks to adaptation. And that's kind of like the concept that underpins just the way that our physiology works in general. It's why training works. We apply a certain stress and we adapt, and then that's kind of our baseline. And when you're chronically under eating, the adaptation initially involves some fat loss. That's why dieting works. That's why it's successful. But at a certain point, your body has adapted to that amount of calories. It's not going to lose any more body fat because its job is self-preservation. And so what it's going to do instead is it's going to down-regulate other processes. That's why a lot of women lose their menstrual cycle when they're under consuming food chronically. That's why like the NEAT, some non-exercise activity thermogenesis, stuff like I'm doing right now with the fidgeting, that's imperceptible. You wouldn't even know you're doing it. Those movements become down-regulated. Whether you realize it or not, the way that you perform in your training becomes down-regulated because you're only giving your physiology so many resources to work with, and our bodies are incredible at working with what they're given. So at a certain point, that's now your baseline, and that's kind of what your physiology has come to expect. But I think sometimes when people are talking about this, especially in the online landscape, it's like very scary and fear-mongering. And it's like, you harmed your metabolism, you're damaged. And
yeah, my metabolism's broken.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're fucked. Sorry. Like, now you're stuck with that.
Oh my God, there was a specific saying that people would say about their metabolism. Oh my God.
I know exactly. You're right. And I can't think of it either.
So when I was working at Lifetime and I was doing, like my fitness consultations with people like that, I believed that for a while. I forget what the saying was. It was so wrong. I inadvertently misled a lot of people into believing that their metabolism was in maybe it was like preservation mode. It was a saying
starvation mode.
Yes, that's what it is.
Starvation
mode. Fuck yeah,
yeah.
Emily. That's what it was. You're just in starvation mode.
Yeah. Which is like, I understand where that line of thought comes from, because it's sort of taking the reality and like amplifying it in a way that sounds dangerous. And
right.
That's what we tend to do, unfortunately. Like, we make all these things sound like hazards. And I think sometimes that's like well intended. It's meant to scare people into better behavior. But that's like fundamentally what I'm against. I think it's much better to educate people into better behavior than it is to scare them in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't know. Crazy fucking thought. Anywho, I think a lot of people have sort of misunderstood that conceptually, but the good thing about that down regulation that takes place is that it works just the same in the other direction. And you can dig yourself out of that hole if you're willing to gradually titrate your intake back up to a reasonable place, especially if you have a goal that involves any degree of body recomposition, fat loss, muscle development. In that resource-deprived context, none of that is happening. So what do you have to lose by increasing your intake? At that point, you're only going to get more out of your training. You're going to build muscle like a freak because you're a sponge and you haven't been eating anything for all this time. So all of a sudden, you're going to respond in a way that you've never responded before. You're going to feel some way that you've never felt before. And you're probably not going to gain any body fat in that process, which is what you're most afraid of. But even if your body fat percentage stays the same, goes up a couple percentage points. Now you're eating like 2,200 calories.
Yeah.
And if you want to diet, you can do that in a healthy way.
Right.
And it's not miserable and you're not eating 1,200 calories. So regardless of what happens and how scary that might be initially, you end up in a much better position from a health perspective and in terms of tackling whatever you're trying to tackle.
The Coach 'em Up podcast is thrilled to be reunited with Atlantis Strength. If you listen to the show, then you know that I think machines are highly underrated, not only for Gen Pop, but for athletic populations as well. With Atlantis Strength, the biomechanics are always dialed in. The joints line up, the strength curve is always on point, and every rep feels natural and strong. And it's no surprise. They've been engineering and shaping greatness in their Canadian workshop for over 40 years. Now that I own a gym myself, it was a no-brainer which company I was going to purchase my machines from. They are simply the best. If you're a gym owner, strength coach, or you just love good machines, go to atlantisstrength.com or reach out to me directly at connect@coachemuppod.com. This episode is brought to you by friend of the show, David Gray of David Gray Rehab, creator of the absolute game-changing foot, ankle, and Achilles program. To date, it's helped over 8,000 people, including Zach and myself, get back to running, jumping, and playing pain-free. This program isn't just for athletes, it's also been used by coaches and physios in the NFL, NBA, and Premier League, as well as every other major sport. And if that wasn't impressive enough, you can get the full program 15% off lifetime access when you click the link in the show notes and use code TIM at checkout. Now, back to the show. Something that's consistent. Now, this is in male and female populations. High school, collegiate, pro. Well, shit, I'm just not hungry. I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you eat breakfast? They're like, no, I'm not hungry. I'm like, motherfucker, drink something then.
Yes.
You know? So, but brings me to my next question for you is, for the people who struggle or just eating more is uncomfortable for them, what are the easiest ways to get in additional calories? Where would you recommend most of those calories come from?
Yeah.
Give us some tricks of the trade here.
Yeah. So first, before I dig into the specifics, which I will do, I love that comment because it comes up all the time. If you're chronically undereating, you're not going to be hungry for more food because that's also part of that adaptation process. And what I think a lot of us miss, and it's easy to just not even think about this, even when you're fully educated on it, is the fact that you're not just responding to your appetite on a given on a daily basis, but your appetite is also responding to you and the choices that you're making with food. And so if you're under eating constantly, you're not training yourself to be hungry for more food. Like that is also part of that adaptation process. And to a similar extent, that's sometimes like a cycle that people fall into where I'm not hungry, so I underate yesterday, and now I'm starving, so now I'm going to overeat today.
Yeah.
And then it becomes that like weekend cycle where you consume 6,000 calories over the span of a couple days, despite eating 1,200 for the rest of the week.
Yeah, Monday through Friday, I nailed it, but Saturday night, I broke down and I ate 2 Domino's pizzas.
Yes, and unfortunately, like
fucking delicious, might I add.
Delicious. It comes at a price always, though.
Yeah, it does.
And like, unfortunately, averages matter. And so across that week, there you go.
Yeah.
But to your point with like the actual practical side of things and how to increase calories comfortably, I think biggest thing is, especially for very health conscious folks, and The fiber maxing thing, I'm on board with. Generally, like, yes, most people underconsume it and need to focus on it more. Very health conscious people tend to think carbs, and then they tend to isolate only like healthy and clean carbs.
Yes.
That is going to be very difficult to consume in adequate quantities, especially because of how satiating fiber is. So like, try your fucking best to eat whole potatoes as your only carb source. That's going to be almost impossible.
Listen, thank you, God, for bringing this up, because this is a battle that I dealt with for a long time, and it's something I eventually, arrived at under my own conclusions. And now this goes both ways. Number one, if you are eating fiber-dense foods, it's probably going to be really hard to overeat.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Just
an advantage.
eating healthier and eating, high fiber food options and protein, good luck overeating.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you have an athlete, particularly athlete, or someone who's trying to build more muscle or make an adaptation that's going to require caloric surplus, brother, good luck doing it, eating nothing but sweet potatoes.
It's not going to happen.
You're going to, first of all, you're going to be shitting nonstop.
Yeah.
Most of us
Yeah.
will, that's going to be that's the real adaptation that's going to occur.
Yeah.
Am I spot on here?
Yes, 100%. And that's why it's so context dependent. And like, my advice for a middle-aged guy who's just trying to lose some body fat for general health purposes, going to be very different than that athlete who needs to be consuming more food. Yeah, in some cases we need to be encouraging more whole foods. And I've seen the diet recalls I have seen, like the span of what these things involve. Like, nothing would ever surprise me at this point. I've seen some crazy shit. So depending on like what that looks like, introducing more whole foods can be absolutely what you need. Or it can be an absolute fucking disaster for an athlete like you're talking about, especially if all of a sudden you're flipping that switch and you're going from like 15 grams of fiber a day to 40.
Been there.
You're going to be suffering.
Dude, I remember, so I was having all of this, by the way, I was having GI issues, mostly because it turns out I had a gluten thing and a parasite, H. pylori. You familiar?
I've had it.
Yeah. Oh my God, you too.
Same.
Yeah, that antibiotic regimen.
Unfortunate.
Horrible. By the way, fun fact, 50% of the human population has a parasite. It's called Helicobacter pylori. It's the leading cause of gastric cancer and heartburn. So half of you have it. Congratulations. Hope you enjoy the rest of your ride to work. But I had that.
Yeah.
I was having all kind of gastrointestinal. By the way, seriously, fucking Google that. I'm not kidding.
That's legitimate.
That and then the gluten thing. And I'm thinking, okay, now I don't know this. I'm thinking, I just need to eat healthier foods. So what that means is way more vegetables and carb sources like sweet potato, right? So overnight, I went from probably 10 grams of fiber a day to 50 a day. And I got to tell you, I've never had more GI distress and discomfort during that 10-day period or whatever it was when I was fiber maxing before it was popular than my entire life. It was horrible. And I remember being bloated, gassy, just miserable, and thinking, what the fuck? I'm eating healthy. What's the problem?
And that's the caveat, and that's the little bit of pushback I have with the whole fiber maxing thing, is that you can't, like, that's also an adaptation, by the way. Like, if you all of a sudden turn up your fiber intake out of fucking nowhere, your gut is not ready. It's not saturated at all.
That's not what you want. It's not the kind of saturation you're looking for. Yeah.
No, you don't want fiber saturation all of a sudden coming from zero. Which, by the way, if you track your fiber intake for the week, the average across Americans is about 15 grams a day. 90% of the population does underconsume it. And that has a huge role in colorectal cancer. It has a huge role in most people's gut issues. However, you have to train your gut to handle more fiber. And so you have to sort of introduce it gradually. And there is only so much that from an appetite perspective you can handle before you have to start introducing some simpler carb sources into your life. And that's why like sports nutrition recommendations tend to differ so much from the average population, because there is a very valid use case for processed foods when it comes to those individuals. And obviously there may be some better or worse options depending on the scenario, depending on the person. But apple juice does the trick when you're not hungry, but you've been told you need to eat more carbs, liquid calories, like very simple carb sources, like dried fruit is one that I talk about all the time. Honey, maple syrup, things that you can add a tremendous amount of calories with very little volume is sort of what you want to be going for, which are not the high fiber ones.
You know, and like, I think I want to run something by you.
Okay.
I want your opinion. You tell me, this is, and you give me a grade on a scale 1 to 10. All right.
God, okay.
Okay. My take on this is eat as much fiber as you can without running into those issues. Eat as healthy as you can. And that's your baseline. And then what you can do is you can rest assured that you're doing everything you can to fiber max within to an appropriate amount. You're getting a variety of foods with a lot of macro and micronutrient density.
Yep.
And then just fill in the gap with fucking white rice or apple juice, brother.
Yes.
Is that acceptable?
10 out of 10.
Let's freaking go.
That's
I know a thing or two.
That's exactly like what I would recommend too. And that gives you leeway because we all want to consume certain foods like for pleasure also. Like I love cookies and like we all love those things.
Right now, what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
That's a great question. There's a very specific cookie at a very specific place in Phoenix that is the best. It's an apple almond cookie.
An apple almond cookie.
It's fucking insane.
That sounds fucking incredible.
It's fucking insane. It's from a pizzeria near me.
My personal, if there is a loaf of banana bread, dude, I am going to consume the entire thing. Full stop. Heat it up a little bit. Put a little extra butter on there. Maybe even a dash of honey. I don't know. Let's get weird. There's no stopping me. I'm like a rabid animal.
Despite the latex allergy.
Yeah. I did share that with her off air. So for everyone who didn't know, I'm allergic to latex. You now all know.
Tim's health information away on the podcast.
So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
So some of you out there may be wondering why whenever you consume a banana, you get a little heartburn, a little uncomfortable. And you think to yourself, that's fucking weird. I love bananas, but I don't tolerate them very well. Well, as it turns out, bananas have a protein similar to that found in proteins that would agitate someone with a latex allergy. In fact, I believe they're in the latex tree family.
Yeah.
And there are other, you know what? It's not coconut. Is it? It is coconut. I believe. I think it's banana, kiwi, pineapple,
avocado.
I love avocado. Can't eat it.
Same.
I will have it's heartburn is how it manifests for me.
I mean, yeah.
So if you're allergic to latex, also ask me how I found out. Ask me. Ask me how I found out about my latex allergy. Anyway, I'll move on. But there are many foods that I can't consume as a byproduct of that allergy, which was news to me.
Yeah. It's referred to, and this isn't super common knowledge. I also don't know how readily adopted it is by like the medical community at this point, but it's referred to as latex food allergy syndrome. And it's like this coalescence where if you're allergic to latex, you tend to also have sensitivities to this group of fruits. And yeah, I have the same situation. And latex is also used in a lot of adhesives. Yeah. So like Band-Aids.
I know my nasal strips I have to get.
I couldn't use. I was mouth taping.
Yeah, dude. Yes.
I told you about the avocado.
My fucking lips are burning, dude.
Yeah, I basically ripped off a layer of skin on my mouth with these fucking strips for yeah. Can't do that. But yeah, essentially, so it's in a lot of adhesives. And I also found out because I used to use Sanoderm when I was healing tattoos. Fuck that, because I would get like blisters bubbling in my healing wound of a tattoo underneath the Sanoderm. It looked horrific. I have photos somewhere, but can't use that anymore for that reason.
Fuck.
Yeah.
What a terrible way to find out. Yeah.
Yeah, be careful out there with the adhesives. It's unfortunate.
So I think it might make sense to actually, you know what? I have a curveball question. Have you spent much time researching GLP-1s and Retta and trizipatide and
very little
Yeah.
in terms of like actually engaging with the literature. I've had a couple of clients who've utilized them. And so I've sort of like supported the nutrition side of that.
Yep.
That's really the extent of my familiarity.
I'm interested because I've been, loosely paying attention to retatrutide, and it's looking like it's absolutely dominating its way through clinical trials. Mm-hmm. And my question is how do you see that impacting the nutrition landscape? Like, what are you already seeing? And then do you have any predictions for the future, good or bad?
Yeah. I mean, I think what these compounds sort of promise is like the panacea that we've all been like looking for in other things for so long, where it's like, okay, I can take this and reduce food noise or see these crazy adaptations to my training and that sort of thing. And I think the pushback from a lot of the fitness community is like, okay, this is just going to promote laziness and people aren't going to care as much about these other variables that are really important. But I think like my argument here is that it's similar to the athlete that you talked about, the volleyball player who was like exceptional as it stood, but then she accelerated her performance so quickly by optimizing the nutrition piece. That will also be the case for anyone who's taking any of these compounds who maybe aren't as engaged with like the nutrition aspect or the training aspect. It could accelerate those results so much more, essentially to optimize those other variables too.
Yeah.
And I have seen, and there's literature to support this, that once someone starts seeing any positive return on investment with fitness, it's so much easier for that to snowball into adopting other aspects.
Yeah.
And I think that's even the case for a lot of us. Like, did you start caring about your nutrition just on a whim, or was it because you were training? And so as a side effect, you were like, well, how can I get more out of this? Now I'm going to care about this other thing. That's how most of us end up wading into those waters.
100%.
And so I think the benefits a lot of the time may outweigh the cost, but I also recognize that we don't necessarily know everything about them yet.
Yeah, my thing, when I think about it, it's like, because I have seen some of that rhetoric where it's like, oh, people just want a quick fix and they want an easy way out and they don't want to do the work. And it's like, okay, let's just assume all that's true, right? Here's the thing. Most people don't give a fuck about that. You know what I mean? We care. I care because I like to train.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. And it does more for me than just, give me a physical, appearance that I'm happy with or whatever.
Yes.
But for many people, it's like you have an opportunity to improve your health dramatically, quickly, almost certainly.
Yeah.
Right? And if that isn't the best launching point for you to start taking better care of yourself and other aspects of your life, sometimes people just need a little fucking help, man. People need help.
People need help. And that's exactly my thought as well. Like, there are some people who are just never going to love training the way that we do.
They don't care.
And they're doing it because they feel forced to.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because people in our space can become so like judgmental and so fucking like holier than thou and could really use being brought back down to earth. And I mean, transparent, like I've even like felt that creeping in at points, and I'm grateful that I have been brought down to earth.
Yeah.
Like, I think more people
need to feel helpless.
Yes. And maybe
if you've ever felt 100%. If you've ever, look, it's easy for me to speak about because I've, from, overcoming addiction or, like growing up in childhood, there were a lot of things that happened to me that were out of my control. There's nothing I could do about it. And then growing up, it's like, whether it's addiction or mental health stuff, if you truly know what it's like to be helpless and to have tried to make a difference and you're unable to, then when I see people, who are able to completely transform their lives because of a peptide,
right?
You're like, yes, good for you.
Yeah, take the win.
Oh my God, a win is a win.
A win is a win.
When was a win not a win? That's what I want to know. When is that? When the fuck did that change? Who changed those rules?
It's ridiculous, and I think like. My like real leveling experience with this actually was when I did my clinical internship rotation so that I would be eligible for the RD exam.
Yeah.
So I worked in a county hospital for this internship, and I did an accelerated version because I had my PhD finished and everything. But I spent a couple months in a county hospital, and most of our patients were either incarcerated, refugees, or homeless. And the way that changed my perspective on fucking everything, I am so grateful for.
Yeah.
Because you have a person in front of you who doesn't have a home to go back to. They're going to go back onto the street immediately once they're just discharged. And the reason they came to you is because they learned the language that is necessary to get admitted so that they could get literally a bottle of Ensure. That's all they fucking needed. That's all they wanted. And as the dietitian, you're like, absolutely, what else do you want? Like, what can I do for you while you're here for 2 hours? Mm-hmm. And the most heartbreaking shit, and that is honestly, obviously that's representative of a certain subset of the population, but the majority of the population is not like you and I.
No.
And a lot of people are really struggling. And so many professionals in our space are very quick to like tell those people that they're a burden on the healthcare system and they're costing us so much money because they're so fucking lazy and they're pieces of shit. Okay, well, if we can offer them a solution that then makes them less of a fucking burden, why are we complaining about that 100%.
Now? I also think, I was, talking about the addiction piece too. I don't think people most people, they don't want to be in a place where that's their only option. Mm-hmm. There's a lot for many people, a lot of shame around that.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, it's out of their control.
Yes.
It actually is an addiction. Yeah. And I think that's something that's not discussed often enough, or it would be classified as, frankly, just like disordered eating. Mm-hmm. And I don't think enough people extend enough understanding or empathy in that place.
Agreed. And it's so hard. It's particularly hard to navigate because, of course, like addiction of any kind is a nightmare to pull yourself out of. That I can't even imagine. It's not something I've personally experienced, but Jesus Christ, like that's a lot. Mm-hmm. Food is unique because you can't abstain from it.
Yes.
And I don't know that like an addiction to food can be classified in the same way and can be diagnosed the same way, yada, yada, yada. But we all understand that these are like behavioral tendencies that at least somewhat operate similarly to addiction. And, you seek comfort through food, you seek pleasure through food. Sometimes it's like the best part of your day and you see people coping through food. Mm-hmm. And how do we not have understanding for that when it's not like these people you have to eat food to survive. Yep. You can't just cut it off for the rest of your life. It's not that it's harder, but it's a very hard thing to learn how to change like that once you're especially at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, to put a point on this, I think the peptide thing is a good thing. I think it gives us an opportunity as fitness professionals not to punch down,
Yes.
But to use that as an opportunity to, one, like be happy that people have a solution, but two, maybe the focus can shift towards how to continue to supplement that and, put people in a position to now ingrain behavior change running parallel to that.
Yeah.
So that they can keep those results and live a overall healthier and happy life.
Yes.
And I want to circle back to the fiber conversation real quick. And then we've probably got one more topic and then you have a lot. We're doing a Q&A today. People showed out for the Q&A for Emily here. So she knows none of the questions that are coming. Nope. We've got some good ones. Circling back around to the fiber conversation, because I'm realizing I think we left a gap. Mm-hmm. So we did talk about how difficult it is going from like not a lot to a lot and doing that too quickly.
Yep.
Also having too much in your diet if your goal is performance or your goal is to build muscle or operate in a caloric surplus, how that can be a potential hindrance. What I don't think we discussed is what is a way to start ramping up towards pragmatically introducing more fiber into one's diet because, as you mentioned, it is important.
She's important. Yeah, and I think like the reason that fiber maxing is such a thing now is similar to the protein thing where like people were under consuming it maybe relative to their goals. And it makes sense that now that's and this was like an early message that I was constantly propagating was like we need to obsess over fiber a little bit more because it's so under consumed by so many people. Obviously there's an extreme, scenario that we can get to that we already talked about, but what makes the actual kind of guideline that you want to be shooting for roughly is about 14 grams per 1,000 calories of your diet. So generally that ends up being about 25 grams a day for women and upwards of 38 grams a day for men. That's like the bottom. So more is generally better from a health perspective, but again, you have to scale up to that. And it serves so many different purposes in the human body. The most notable ones are regulating things like blood glucose, for example, because it slows down digestion. It can stabilize some of those crazy responses that some people experience. It also binds to cholesterol, so it's great for people who have elevated blood lipids because it helps actually excrete the excess cholesterol. And then
shout out excretion.
Yeah. Never thought I'd say that sentence. Thank you. That was wonderful. And because a lot of my like master's and PhD research is related to the gut. And so that's really where I became super familiar with fiber because that is essentially what the microbes within your gut consume. That's their food.
Yeah.
And at least the fermentable ones. So it's when we talk about gut health, people are like so quick to do all these crazy things and to take all the probiotics and just like throw shit at
Please,
the body.
can we have this conversation? Because there was some stuff I had planned. And I think this is going to be better.
Okay.
Look,
let's have the conversation.
So, because there are a lot of claims made around the importance of gut health, how to achieve a healthy gut. And a lot of that stuff is like kind of nebulous, and it's weird because like there are pieces of real science around like the role of the gut and like serotonin production and just your overall sense of well-being. And if you're gassy, bloated, uncomfortable, it's gonna fucking affect your mood. And so like there's these things that are very real, but then a lot of the solutions are proposed solutions and the fear mongering around things. It's like, oh, you're a little gassy sometimes, you have fucking SIBO for sure. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I wasn't aware that you spent so much time in that aspect specifically. So would you mind unwinding the mess or the myth that or attempting to? I know we could probably do an entire podcast on that.
Yeah.
But define gut health for us, and then let's start working backwards from that and start sussing out some of the things that are actually applicable that we can do to improve gut health and start discarding some of the things that maybe are a little overhyped.
Yeah. So I think the best way to think about your gut, because it is a very like nebulous concept, is it's realistically an ecosystem that far outnumbers you. There are I think 3 trillion different bacterial strains and species present within the GI tract, and there are far more bacterial cells in the human body than human cells.
Yeah, we're mostly bacteria, right?
We are a host to that's not even a joke, and that's it's stated in the literature. Yeah. I am the host of my fucking like gut community.
Wow.
It's funny to think about that way. Like, they're not necessarily parasitic. It's a symbiotic relationship, best case scenario. But yeah, we are fully outnumbered. And especially like my expertise is really on the gut-brain axis. And so those relationships are very intriguing to me. And I'm very familiar with at least what we know about them so far. But they control our minds in many ways too. So
can you talk about, let's go into that.
Okay. Yes. I'm like, where do I begin? But so there's a lot of variables at play here because the gut communicates with the nervous system through a lot of different mechanisms. And almost our entire 70% of the immune system lives in the gut. So it really regulates a ton of mechanisms that go on in both directions. So your brain and your gut are constantly in communication with one another through different signaling mechanisms involving like neurotransmitters and the vagus nerve and inflammatory cytokines. And what I sort of focused on for my research was permeability of the GI tract, and specifically the translocation of certain types of bacteria across that barrier that can then enter circulation, cause systemic inflammation, and can even cross the blood-brain barrier and contribute to things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and cognitive decline.
That shit is so fucking fascinating to me.
It's crazy. And there's a reason I became obsessed with it. I was researching that for my master's thesis, and that's what made me do a PhD, was the fact that like it was so underexplored. It was a huge gap at the time. And I was like, well, I'm gonna have to fucking study this myself.
Wow.
Specifically as it relates to exercise is kind of what I did. Like, how does exercise influence these relationships? And potentially my hypothesis, sort of like underpinning all of my work thus far, was that exercise can promote better gut health, and potentially that's one of the reasons why we see that it improves mental health so much, is because of that relationship. But it does, I mean, it drives so much that's happening in our physiology that we're still trying to understand. But when we get back to like the actionable sort of takeaways that people need to focus on, I think a lot of folks jump the gun where we use the concept of the gut microbiome to recommend things like probiotics, just used willy-nilly. And that can be very questionable because if you don't know, this is an ecosystem inside of your body. If you don't know what that ecosystem looks like and you're just introducing...
Yeah, you're just lobbing fucking billions of strains or whatever the fuck into it.
Yeah, then you don't necessarily know if that's going to benefit you or if that's going to hurt you. And there are strains that are generally considered beneficial and commensal. However, you can still have an overabundance of those. And so, for example, and this is kind of a whole other conversation, like I did a GI map and looked at my microbiome at one point. I specifically had an overabundance of the exact strains that are in most probiotics. So had I been taking them, that could have potentially made my shit worse.
Right.
Now, probiotics also don't tend to stick around for very long. Like when you're taking them, they're detectable, but if you stop taking them, they're pretty much gone. So they don't really have a huge long-term impact. But what makes a lot more sense based on what we know right now is really supporting the beneficial bacteria that do exist within our gut microbiomes, because we don't have great individual testing mechanisms right now. Even the GI maps, like, and this is the stuff that we use in the literature too. It's like we take fecal samples, we test what's coming out of the colon. That's not even necessarily representative of everything that's in our intestinal tract. We're not taking a biopsy.
Right.
And even in certain locations along the intestinal tract, you might have different...
I was going to say, and along the journey...
Yes, exactly.
You know, what other bacteria exist in the colon that maybe don't exist in the stomach? And okay.
Yeah, we're capturing like the very last stage, essentially, with that kind of testing. So... there's so much that we don't know that it doesn't make sense to make super targeted recommendations in most cases, which is why my eyebrows raise anytime somebody does that.
Yeah.
But
people build entire brands and businesses off of, being a gut health guru.
Yeah. And really
with no schooling, by the way. Yeah.
Usually not with any... I do my own research.
Yeah. Okay.
I once thought that as well. And yeah, all that I usually recommend, and all that we have to work with in terms of what we can claim confidently, is that eating a diverse array of fiber sources beneficial, because there are different types of fiber, different bacterial strains consume different types of fiber. And really the reason that that's so helpful is that those bacteria then produce these byproducts called short-chain fatty acids. Some of you may have heard of these things. They're a little bit more obscure, but butyrate is an example. That one's a little bit more popular these days. Acetate, propionate. And those short-chain fatty acids are incredibly helpful for overall health status.
Okay.
You see them, they're produced in greater proportions in athletes and active individuals. And so there's a lot, like, of course, there are supplements in like the innovation stages to just like introduce the short chain fatty acids and bypass that entire thing.
Yeah.
And that's
maybe I don't have to fiber max after all.
Maybe not. Maybe you can just take a butyrate supplement. But there's arguments to be made for consuming the fibers anyway, because I also use fiber as kind of a proxy for overall micronutrient status. And high fiber foods tend to come with really beneficial polyphenols and again, micronutrients, minerals, things like that. So you'd be missing out on all those things. But feeding the bacteria in your gut, so eating enough fiber without it being excessive for you and your symptom management, is the biggest one. Next one would be stress. And that's like, that's the fucking hardest one.
Fuck.
Because of that really effective communication between the gut and the brain.
Yeah.
What's happening at the level of the brain is affecting the gut. And then that cycle continues and it can be chaos.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hate hearing that because
it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. Stress, man.
Managing it is really hard.
It is.
But yeah, as a human, you can only do so much. You can't just like eliminate stressors from your life.
You know, what's funny is like the people who end up being super, like the biohacking person that's like hyper focused on eliminating stress. And like the amount of stress that goes into trying to eliminate stress from your life.
Exactly.
It's not fucking worth it.
Exactly. You're trading types of stress.
Yeah.
All the fucking
yeah.
Yeah, that drives me insane.
Yeah, with a now a heightened sense of neuroticism. Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a panic attack if I accidentally run out of this one obscure supplement out of the 50 that I take because I've convinced myself it's necessary.
Right.
That's a whole conversation. But yeah, the stress is a bitch and you can't necessarily avoid it, but that's kind of like what all of this is about. It's having a balance between stressors that are applied to our physiology and how we can actually like recover it from and tolerate them. And food is a part of that. Like calories are stress mitigating, carbs are stress mitigating, like eating enough is a huge piece. And really just kind of supporting yourself in every way that you can, including like sleep and hydration and the boring stuff. But
you know what comes to mind, dude?
Yeah.
So because we've talked a lot about undereating and the impact that, but I'm seeing in my mind, especially now that we're talking about like just gut health and the connection to your overall mental and emotional well-being. I'm undereating, so I'm almost certainly not getting enough of what my gut needs, right? And is there a feedback loop that occurs between being stressed, not eating enough, not getting what you need, to being more stressed, to not eating enough? Yes, you say?
Yes, yes. It's like a trap. And yes, 100%. And that's something that, again, we don't always think about it, but our physiology it's interpreting most stresses the same way.
Evolutionarily, that makes sense too, right? Like if I'm not getting enough food, I'm going to be getting a signal. It's like, hey.
Yeah. Self-preservation is
nothing's okay.
All that this is concerned with. And so not eating enough is stressful on our physiology. Training is stressful on our physiology. Life is stressful on our physiology. Yeah. And so if we're not like
physiology is fighting for its fucking life over here, dude.
It is in this day and age, like we are just bludgeoning our physiology.
Yeah.
And so there are certain aspects of that we have control over. Yeah. And so we need to support ourselves in those ways, since we can't control all of them.
The Coach 'em Up podcast has partnered with Eleiko.
Let's go!
Not only is Eleiko found in 85% of Power 5 schools, but they also offer at-home solutions from racks, flooring, rigs, barbells, bumper plates, your favorite accessories like straps and weightlifting belts, you name it, Eleiko's got you covered. Go to eleiko.com/coachemup and get access to the same equipment that they're using in the best facilities with the best athletes on the planet. I'm going to pull up our Q&As here because we've got like 40 minutes. We've got a bunch of questions. So if we're able to get through all the questions and I have time to circle back around to some more topics, okay. But I want to make sure we get to these Q&As because some of them are really good. Okay. I love this question. Okay. Shout out Nadia Sloan, which word on the street is she may be coming to Austin, Texas to work at this gym. I don't know. That's what they hear. Hopefully, she's not the only person.
Oh, God.
Nadia, thank you for asking a question. The question from Nadia is, if you could eliminate one fad diet, Which one would it be and why?
Okay. The non-answer I'm going to give first.
Okay.
And then I'll give you an answer.
Great.
Any diet that has a name needs to fucking go. It's not, none of them make sense. It's like I feel like just love to categorize ourselves as people, but that's like immediately flying in the face of everything that we know about nutrition and what's good for us, which is diversity is generally the best thing. So the second that we start eliminating things and hyperfixating on others, we've thrown health to the wayside. So that's my spiel first. In terms of choosing one, I think in terms of what's maybe been the most harmful to the most people recently, and there are use cases where it makes sense, it would be the carnivore situation.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden you have people who are convinced that their insane blood lipid profiles are perfectly fine and safe. And people will have heart attacks because of that. People will lose family members because of that. And I really don't love the fact that, yes, it's obviously okay to challenge concepts and to challenge systems and to have skepticism. But when we're pushing back against like medical professionals, very well-supported guidelines, it gets dangerous. And I think we've already kind of seen that happening. And thankfully, I feel like people are shifting away because they're like, why am I all of a sudden deteriorating? And also feeling like ass the entire time.
Yep.
But that would probably be the most harmful one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is from Ophi_trains. Emily, what's a good game day nutrition breakdown?
Oh God, I'm this person. I have questions for, the question would be like, what kind of game?
Well,
you know this person?
I can tell you, my dog plays rugby.
Okay. You're going to need a lot of food. My second question would be what time of day would be the game? And I'll sort of just, I guess, give recommendations regardless, assuming that you have enough, at least a couple hours beforehand to like eat something, digest something. So I would definitely consume a lot of simple carbs prior. If it's a later in the day situation, consume regular mixed meals. You don't need to like avoid fats or proteins or fiber or anything like that. But once you get closer in proximity to the event itself, you want to really isolate more of the simple carbohydrate sources so that we can minimize GI distress and so that we're not like trying to deal with all of these like fats and fibers as well. So ideally a couple of meals in your system, at minimum, some simple carbs. And then afterwards, I would say another hefty meal. My go-tos here are things like burritos, things like, it's hard to give exact examples. I love like pho and soups.
Delicious.
Especially soups with noodles. Essentially, if you're in this kind of sport or if you're this kind of athlete, like the ones we've been talking about, who need a lot of carbs, any opportunity you have to kind of like combine multiple carb sources into one meal is generally a good way to go so that it doesn't feel like you're consuming as much as you are.
Yeah.
So like a burrito with rice, with corn, easy ways to kind of like sneak in those extra grams.
And delicious.
And delicious.
I
have a burrito every day.
Show up fully saturated, my brother. Show up to the game fully saturated. You have to make a fully saturated.
I will. I'll figure it out.
Actually, I want to go back in time because you said that I said it. You actually said it.
Did I?
You said it first.
Okay, I probably said it in
and then I made it a thing. It's a thing now. Okay, this is from _bad knees. Top 5 alternate music bands.
Alternate.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just give my top 5 favorite bands? They probably classify.
Let's go top 5.
Okay. Tool.
Oh.
Dream Theater.
Nice.
Behemoth.
Wow.
Gojira.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
How many is that? 4?
4.
That's hard to pick a 5th. Maybe Avenged Sevenfold.
Wow. What a fucking list.
Those are my top 5.
Okay. Solid list.
I've seen them all live at this
Wow. Honestly, that solidifies it.
Yeah, no, I'm a real
You're a real one.
I'm not faking it. Yes.
I've not seen Tool live. That is a bucket list thing for me.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Anytime I can, because who knows how long they're going to be performing at this point. Next opportunity, I'm there.
I'm with you. Oh, man, this is a great question. So this is from Tactical Taco 22. By the way, fucking awesome name, dude. What do you recommend to a trainer who wants to further his or her nutritional knowledge base? Where would you direct them?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. And it's a tough one to answer because obviously I can't say like, you don't need to go get advanced degrees in this stuff to be competent in terms of communicating with clients. I would say take every opportunity that you have to engage with the body of literature that's available. And what I mean by that is when you're working with people one-on-one, they're asking you questions all the time. And that is, in my opinion, the best opportunity for you to learn more and then to practice communicating what you've learned to your clients. So don't be afraid to maybe in the moment say, hey, I'm going to look into that. Hey, let me think about this a little bit more. I'm going to get back to you. Go find some answers. We have so many resources at our fingertips at this point. Come back to them, help educate them on that topic. And then probably some other things are going to come up along the way that are also opportunities. Now, in terms of a resource, because people ask me all the time for book recommendations or where do I find research? And that's also hard to answer because literacy and interpreting research is really a skill that takes a very long time to refine. But this is not a plug. I don't have any affiliation. There's a website called Consensus that's really awesome at consolidating research because you can essentially type in, it's an AI platform of some kind. You can type in a question, better yet if it's a yes or no question, and it will basically come up with the consensus of the entire body of literature, and it's going to give you every reference.
That's fucking cool.
And it's going to tell you how much those references were cited. And if you find a good systematic review or a good meta-analysis on that topic that's relatively recent, I would say at least since maybe 2015, and it's heavily cited, that's a really good resource to look into. And especially reviews are very approachable for someone who is familiar with the concepts, but maybe not, involved in research directly, because they will explain in the intro and discussion sections especially sort of the rationale, the background, all that fun stuff.
Love it. Okay. This is from Coach Jake Bennett. Now, I know this is the antithesis to the conversation we've been having, so disclaimer, but you have to pick 3 foods to live off of the rest of your life.
Perfect.
What are they and why?
Okay, to actually sustain my health. I wonder, can they be complete foods, meals, or do they need to be individual ingredients, do you think?
3 foods.
Okay. I'm going to say breakfast burrito.
Nice.
You got a tortilla. I would throw some potatoes and some vegetables in there. I would throw eggs in there. That's a really good combination from a micronutrient perspective. This is a very hard question. Maybe, okay. I would say pho or some sort of Asian soup. I don't really discriminate between all of them. I love them all. But also the hydration provided by something like pho is excellent. It's got a good amount of salt, a ton of fluid. So in terms of a post-workout situation, that's a great one. Also a lot of micronutrients in there. A third, I hesitate to say a big ass salad because that makes me sound like such a dietitian. Mm-hmm. But I do love a good, I live in Arizona. I'm a hot climate person. Mm-hmm. So those other 2 options weren't very refreshing in that sense. So I'm also going to throw in a salad.
I got to say, I'm a sucker for a real good Caesar salad.
Yeah. My
God.
Load that bad boy up. I'm not talking about a little baby salad that you might find out in the world. I'm talking about we're adding sweet potato to it.
Yeah.
Maybe not in a Caesar situation, but I'm throwing a lot of calories in that salad.
Yeah.
It's not It's not light.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, that was another peptide question. All right, Justin.Zimmer61. Shout out, Justin. All right, post-training carb intake for high-intensity training. Mainly high GI or mix of high and low?
High glycemic index or mix of high and low.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I would say mix of high and low. It would actually, I mean, you can go either way. Neither one is wrong in this context. You're not necessarily going to be like missing out on anything. But the mix of high and low will sort of like take care of the immediate glycogen repletion problem, for lack of a better term. But then you'll also kind of have like the sustained energy of the lower glycemic index carbs at the same time. So you kind of get like dual purpose functions out of that. That would be my answer, but you could go just high too.
We have though 4. All right. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can, we'll put like just a bow on it here. I coach young female athletes. How do I get them to eat enough before practice? And frankly, anyone who's coached youth athletes at all, male or female, it's a fucking problem. You know what I mean?
Problem.
So from your chair, from the registered dietitian, what's a conversation you're having with these high school athletes to eat more?
I think your job in that context is to find out what their barriers are. If it's a psychological thing, then again, it's going to probably take some ongoing conversations and trust building to show them like, hey, this is something that you should care about. These are the reasons. But maybe sometimes it's a practical thing. Maybe they have also been convinced. Like one of the saddest situations I saw was a little girl when I was working in that hospital setting. She was maybe like 6 years old. And she was telling me and the dietitian I was working with at the time that she only wanted to eat salads because she only wanted to eat healthy foods.
Yeah.
And this kid was malnourished.
Poor baby.
So kids are getting the same kind of messaging that we are, and they're obviously not prepared. Like the level of nuance, the level of like processing it's not there yet. And adults aren't equipped for this.
Yeah. Let alone 6-year-olds.
Yeah. You might have a lot to undo in terms of like, these foods are healthy for you because you are doing this and because this is like what you're demanding of your body. But I would say whenever you're talking to anyone with these challenges, finding what they care about. Like, why are they training? What do they love about their sport? What do they love about their life? Whatever. Tie it into that somehow. And that's really the first way that you can get buy-in. And then make sure that you're checking in with them, because sometimes people just don't pay attention to the fact that like, hey, my training sessions feel way better and I'm stronger and I'm a better athlete because of these things. So asking them like, hey, have you been feeling any different? Kind of touching base, that can at least reinforce it from there. Yeah.
Miss Never Ski Pale G Day. Okay. I tried. I think I'm close. Do you need to change carb consumption during perimenopause?
My follow-up question is, what else has changed for you during perimenopause? Because not inherently because of the hormonal shifts, I will say, as like kind of my catch-all response. But a lot of the time, and these are real things, it's not, I think sometimes it comes across as maybe invalidating to say like, no, there's actually nothing different. Your physiology should respond the same way. But in many cases, like in many ways it does. We actually don't see shifts in like metabolism due to physiology alone until the age of like 70, regardless of sex. It's primarily changes in behavior that drives changes in body weight. And again, that's not to say like, oh, you've just gotten lazier, but life contexts change and make certain behaviors more challenging or more inaccessible for whatever set of reasons. So a lot of the time people maybe accidentally correlate what they're going through from a hormonal perspective with other things that they're going through in their life that have changed the landscape of their exercise behaviors and maybe related stuff. So no, not independently. And I would say like the argument is just as strong as with younger women, that if you are training and you're trying to get the most out of it, especially because maybe the priorities shift in perimenopause, maybe you're more focused on bone density maintenance and things like that are really relevant to women, that's also going to depend on having the right resources available.
All right. Anderson, 1680. Thoughts on 36-hour fast trends?
I mean, overrated. I think it really depends. I think if you ask me about not eating, I'm going to say I'm not a fan. That's my bias, just as a human, and then also professionally speaking.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like there are contexts where fast makes sense for whatever set of reasons, religious purposes being one of them. Like
Sure.
Ramadan is happening, I believe, right now as we speak. There are certain use cases where like that's going to be happening and it's unavoidable. Okay, we can work with it. My question would be, why do you think a 36-hour fast would benefit you? And I think a lot of the time it's related to like the autophagy argument and like cell turnover that happens when we are in a prolonged fast.
Yep.
But a lot of the time that also happens at a very similar level, just in a deficit.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the time the people that are drawn to fasting are the same people that are drawn to like, can I add a 6 workout? Can I do this other thing? It's like, work is not your problem. You are a masochist and you like to put yourself through hard things to feel like you're working hard and doing the right thing. And that makes sense, but it's not necessarily actually helping you.
Yeah.
It's probably hard for very little payoff.
That concludes our Q&A. Before we get into segments, I would love to spend 5 or 10 minutes just discussing the growth you've had.
Oh God. I've received way too many compliments today from you, and we can do this, but I'm uncomfortable.
Listen, that's good. First of all, you even said so yourself, but
Fuck.
but truly, so I found your platform. I think it was like around 7,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you to come on the show. You were at like 12 because I know, look, I don't know a lot, y'all. Okay. But I know what works when I see it. And we have a highly educated, highly articulate person who's able to take complex concepts that people don't fucking understand and make it very understandable. And she's consistent and reliable with her content. That works. Okay. Full stop. And so you do that in light of being a professor, right? Having a 2-hour commute to work, right? So you find a way to get this shit done. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you.
When did you start creating content, taking it seriously? What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way, and any advice that you'd like to give anyone who's considering doing the same thing?
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot to cover. I started creating content, I guess. I created this Instagram account in 2020. So it was when I graduated from undergrad. I finally felt like, because I had my degree, I was qualified enough to talk about this shit.
Yep.
Which already is like a little bit of a limitation that I don't necessarily think other people should wait for that kind of thing.
Yep.
However, like I've obviously been going at this now for about 6+ years. Very, very slow growth. Like the 7,000 followers was the result of like 5.5, 6 out of those years. It was like...
Time out. That's important for everyone to hear. 5 years, 7,000 followers.
I saw nothing. I saw so little payoff. And that is huge, I think, in terms of like early professionals trying to establish themselves on social media, because that plays such a big role in marketing yourself in our space, regardless of what you choose to do. And I'm glad that I recognized that as young as I did, because yeah, it took 5 years of seeing absolutely no payoff. I did not see accelerated growth. I did not see much growth at all. Mm. And then all of a sudden I did. And I think in terms of like what I attribute that to, because I've thought about this a lot, I'm like, what the fuck happened? Especially because I'm very much like a data person and I'm trying to understand like the trends and the patterns here.
Sure.
And I think it took that long for me, and hopefully it doesn't for everybody, to find like my voice and the things that I wanted to talk about and the way that I wanted to talk about them.
Yeah.
Instead of just studying what my peers were doing and trying to mimic that or like fit myself into that. Like I tried like the viral sounds, like B-roll reels. That's not me and that's not going to work for me. Mm-hmm. And I think when you try to fit yourself into those little categories, it reads as inauthentic, because it is. Mm-hmm. And I think the second that I was kind of just like, you know what, I'm just going to be unapologetic and like put out what I want to put out, and try to help the people that I'm interacting with on a daily basis who are confused, whether they be like clients or students or other professionals, that's when I think everything started landing in a way that it didn't before, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And, you know, people see like where you're at right now. You know, your platform's growing, you're crushing it, you're doing podcasts, right?
I'm doing podcasts.
Doing podcasts.
Here I am at the studio.
Here I am. Yes.
Fuck.
But nobody sees like the amount of time and effort that it takes to actually get to, you know, honestly, even just a semblance of some traction or motion.
Yeah.
You know, I think that in fact, I saw a piece of content that you made that mentioned being a masochist and being willing to suck.
Yeah.
And being willing to fail and doing that over and over again. And I got to tell you, being willing to hang in there for 5-6 years, right? And continuing to show up, you got that. You got that dog in you.
I honestly, obviously, in some ways, it's been a strength, and I think it's also like a defect in just like my wiring, where I'm only like fulfilled or satisfied if I've like had to overcome a tremendous amount of suffering to get something.
Same.
And that's, I think, like the academic pursuit. Like nobody gets through a PhD unscathed without like a fair bit of fucking trauma associated with it. And I think that's where I've sought validation my entire life, is like, how much am I willing to suffer to get this thing that I want? I think just that means more to me than like the objective outcome or the success. So at the same time, I think that tends to breed success. You have to be opportunistic. You have to like be willing to eat shit for a very long time. And eventually I think people respect you for that. And then they give you chances.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out eating shit. All right, so we're going to go to segments now, okay? And I got to tell you, I've just enjoyed this conversation so much. She watched me house 3 tacos right before this. I'm feeling fully saturated and ready for these segments.
Hell yeah.
You too?
I'm pretty fully
mostly saturated. Like, she's mostly saturated. We gotta ramp that back up. All right.
Semi-saturated.
So first segment, this is 3 things. It is brought to you by Atlanta Strength. I love Atlanta Strength, so much so that 99% of the equipment going in my brand new gym is from Atlanta Strength. If you're interested in procuring some Atlanta Strength equipment, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Atlantis and tell them that I sent you. Emily, what are 3 things anyone, regardless of their goals or what they're trying to accomplish, can do to improve their food choices today? 3 things, 3 decisions, philosophies, outcomes, actions. What are 3 things someone can do to start being let me say it a better way, being the healthiest version of themselves through food choices?
Okay, I would say I'm going to start really nebulous with the first, and then I'll get a little more specific. Okay. I think a lot of the first, I would say evaluate whatever you're most afraid of doing. And that's probably what you need to do. And that's what especially when it comes to like eating more food or like eating some carbs, and just in most cases, whatever you have been really frustrated by because you've been doing it and it hasn't been working, it's not working, and it's not going to work all of a sudden. So be willing to try something that's a little out of your comfort zone, and whatever you're afraid of, that's probably a hint. Second, I would say gaining awareness is really the biggest piece. I think you learn the most about food and you learn the most about nutrition by paying attention to it for a period of time, because we're not like educated on these things at elementary school and high school. Yeah. I wish we were, but so many people in the general public just don't realize, like, if I eat fettuccine Alfredo, yeah, it's got this amount of carbs, it's got this amount of fat, like this is what it's proportionally giving me. And the best way to learn that is by actually paying attention to what you're consuming and what it provides. So I don't think that everyone needs to like track their diet every day for their entire lives. I don't track mine most of the time at this point. But for a period of time, that's your crash course in nutrition education and in food education and how to actually make decisions that make sense. You have to contextualize it first in your own life. So that would be number 2. Number 3 is super simple, just to like improve overall like nutrient status. I would say aim for the most colorful diet you can. And obviously that's not like M&Ms per se, but generally like,
yeah, I'm thinking shit. If you're talking Skittles, we are good.
We are good to go. That's all of maybe 5 colors. Perfect. But it's really just like a good proxy, because the more colorful your diet, the more like whole foods that you're probably consuming, the more fiber you're probably consuming. Obviously, in certain use cases, you might not need more of that. So, defer to the earlier parts of our conversation. But people also don't like, something that's really cool about nutrition is that certain colors correspond with certain micronutrients. So like red fruits tend to contain this specific group of vitamins and minerals, and blues contain different ones, and greens contain different ones. And so the more you can genuinely like eat the rainbow, not with Skittles, the better off you usually are. There are so many wonderful connections we've made in this conversation.
That is awesome. And that was 3 things. This is Rant and Rave. Emily, when we look at the nutrition landscape, what is a trend or a topic that you're seeing that you want to rant about? Something you see and you go, fuck that. Don't like that. Want to see less of that. And then we're going to bring it back around to rave. What is a topic, a conversation, an idea that you're seeing that you love and you want to see it propagated?
Okay. Rant. And this is okay. I'm a little sick of like green screen content and people using other people's shit just to like make a point.
Preach.
To prove that they're smarter and more qualified. And listen, I did this. If you scroll far enough back in my Instagram, that's like originally how I thought I needed to prove myself, to be honest. And it got a decent amount of traction. Like the clickbait shit works, but I don't think it's the most effective way for us to be having conversations. And I think I've maybe I'm soft now, or maybe I've kind of grown past the idea that we need to like shit on each other in order to sharpen each other, I suppose. So that's kind of going to be my rant, I think, is let's have some original ideas and figure out our own way to communicate things.
Yeah.
Using examples is fine, but I think shitting on other people, like, not the way. Rave, I'm really excited about the fact that, I guess I'm a part of this too, but I'm mostly thinking about peers of mine that are like younger academics or younger people who are interested in science who are realizing the importance of communicating that science with the public, because that's something, that specific role has been missing for so long. Because you've got like the academics, the older faculty members that do the research, never talk about it, only present to one another. And then you've got like the trainers that are doing their best to interpret all of that, but it's complicated shit and you don't always have the literacy to like make sense of all the statistics and whatnot. And so I love that a lot of younger people in my space are realizing that that's an important skill. And I think even the academic profession is starting to value that a little bit more. And the fact that a person like me, like just looking at me and like my age, that I have a professor role, I think speaks to that.
Yep.
Because the fact that I have a social media account didn't deter me from getting hired. The fact that I am like, I look like this didn't deter me from getting hired. I look like a criminal. By look like
this, you mean fucking awesome, dude?
I mean, in the eyes.
I bet your students are like, dude, my fucking teacher is sick.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't think so?
I think they're coming around to that.
Okay.
I think it's funny. This is my first semester, like having my own classes like this. And I was like, we were sussing each other out the first couple of weeks. And I think now they realize that I am kind of one of them. And I'm making references that they understand and shit like that. And I think that has actually helped.
Yeah, fuck yeah, of course.
They care a little bit more about what I'm saying because of that. And because I have skin in the game and I've done these things in the industry and I'm not only in the academic setting. But yeah, I think the fact that like the translation, I think just the integration between like the practical field-based stuff that we've been doing and the academic stuff is they're actually talking to each other now for really the first time in a while.
Real quick note before we go through the rest of these segments. Within the context of the fitness space, it feels like the nutrition space is fucking like it is so toxic, or it can be.
Yes.
It is cutthroat. It is, I mean, it can be quite the hellscape.
It can be a real hellscape. And I think there's probably a combination of variables at play there. I think a lot of people with big egos are also big nerds about this shit. So I think that's part of it. It's also an unfortunate reality that so I was brought up to be a dietitian, like in undergrad, that's what I pursued. And then I did the whole internship and everything. And that field is predominantly female. And unfortunately, many people who are drawn to that field have dealt with eating disorders and or are dealing with eating disorders. And so this is their way to like enable those eating disorders and to justify them and to potentially propagate them. That's of course not always the case. And there can be wonderful nutrition professionals who have dealt with that shit, overcome it. They are more relatable and can work with that population because of it. But yeah, there's a lot of toxicity involved there too.
For sure. Okay, I love this question. Though it's gonna be tough to kind of nail it for you. So this segment is brought to you by David Gray Rehab. If you go to our link, you click on it and you'll find the Foot, Ankle, and Achilles program by David Gray Rehab. I've used it. Zach has used it. Many other athletes and professional teams all across the globe have used the Foot, Ankle, and Achilles program. And if you use code Tim, you get 15% off and lifetime access. Pretty fucking sweet deal if you ask me. All right. So I'm going to have to hone in because you're a Swiss Army knife. If you weren't a coach, registered dietitian, or professor or content creator.
I hate that I'm that many things.
Yeah, but you are and you're doing it well. What would you be and why?
It's one of two things. I would either work with animals.
Okay.
100%, like specifically exotics. Like I have a couple of reptiles. That's like, I wanted to be a veterinarian growing up.
Same. I did too, actually.
Yeah. It's relatable. I love animals, but I think I realized that I was maybe too sensitive to be able to handle that field, to be honest. Not for the faint of heart.
Not at all.
So it would either be that, or I actually, like when I enrolled in undergrad, my major was astrophysics. That was the plan, was to potentially like work. Who knows if I would have been capable of this, but like work at NASA or something was the dream. I loved science very early on. That became super clear to me very quickly. I didn't know that like nutrition and exercise sciences were sciences. So once I found that out, I realized that that's where I belonged, but I loved physics. I took 2 extra years of science in high school. One was AP Physics, and then one was AP Physics 2 that I did for an independent study just by myself.
Damn,
I was
dude.
I was in love with it because it just made so much sense. Like it was math and science, and I loved it. But that would probably be the route I would have taken had I not found this instead.
You know someone's smart when they say they enjoyed taking AP Physics 2 because it made sense.
For fun. For fun.
You legend.
I didn't have to. Insane.
This next segment is brought to you by OVR. You guys know how I feel about OVR. I use OVR. It sponsors the Fast 40 in Apex. I've used all of their equipment, not only in my own personal training, but all my NFL offseason and combine athletes most recently. Click the link and use it. Okay. Overrated versus underrated. What are some thoughts, concepts, ideas surrounding any aspect of nutrition that is overrated? And then on the other end, what is a thought, philosophy, idea surrounding nutrition that is underrated?
Okay. Overrated. I'm going to go with the funny thing that happens in like the food product development space, where like this happened with protein and now it's happening with fiber, where all of a sudden we're like introducing those just into random shit.
Yeah.
okay, now here's like protein soda, and now here's like fiber fucking.
Yeah, fiber Pringles.
Why can we? Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm a huge.
And it'll have a little circle around it, and it'll say 8G's fiber.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because that's like.
You know what we need to do? Emily, can we make a fiber product right now?
Oh, God.
Let's just make a fiber product, something that's actually worth a shit, and then we'll sell it and get rich.
Okay.
Deal?
Deal.
Hell
There's my passive stream of income that we're talking about that I don't have. That would probably, I guess that would be my overrated. I'm a fan of like, get those things from where they just exist and occur, and then have the real version of whatever frankenfood you're seeking. Like, let's not like have the Mexican
I've never heard frankenfood before, but that's so good.
I'm shocked you haven't heard. That's definitely, I did not trademark that one.
Okay.
But like have the Mexican Coke and then have like fiber elsewhere. Don't make a fiber Mexican Coke. That's just not going to be good.
Not ideal.
And unnecessary. That's overrated. I would say that was overrated, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Underrated. I think. Okay, so philosophical. I think nutrition is both overcomplicated and oversimplified at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating because like the science aspect tends to be oversimplified because it is really complicated shit, physiologically speaking. There's like biochemistry and OChem involved, and that's the reason we have to take all these classes when we're getting our degrees. And the average person isn't expected to know that. I feel like they expect themselves to know that stuff. But it's an entire career for a reason. Like, it's okay to outsource that while you focus on your actual job because the science piece is very complex. But the actual like actions and eating well is overcomplicated because actually it's quite simple, like what you need to do in order to live a healthy life. And I think most of us know what that involves. And we kind of tend to like seek little distractions from other things. And we're like, no, if I add this supplement, that'll do the job for me. Most of us know what we need to be doing. It's pretty straightforward. You will notice that you feel better when you do it. But instead, we like to overcomplicate it and make all these excuses for ourselves and justify things in weird ways.
Yeah. Okay. Last segment. This is unsolicited, solicited advice. This is brought to you by Eleiko. Click the link in the show notes and get 10% off any Eleiko product that you find in that link. By the way, we are still the only podcast brand company that I know of that exists on planet Earth that has a discount code to Eleiko. So take advantage of it. Unsolicited, solicited advice. So you fly back tonight, right? Mm-hmm. All right. You're going to get on the plane. You guys are boarding the plane. You sit down and plane takes off and you're just finally getting settled in, right? And do you know what aisles? Do you have an aisle seat? Do you know where you're sitting at?
I do have an aisle seat.
You have an aisle seat. Okay. So there's one person next to you. Okay. Mm-hmm. You get halfway through the flight. It's not a far flight. Arizona's pretty close. For whatever reason, you are struck, compelled, overwhelmed. You have to share a piece of unsolicited advice to the passenger sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. It can be about anything. What would that advice be?
Oh, God. How to not sound mean, especially because you and I we're both like ADHD brain all day. Most people like, you need focus. When it comes to like health and nutrition, what I mean by that is not ping-ponging around between all these different approaches and all these different like pieces of content that you're consuming, and it's all over the place and it's confusing. It's drowning out that noise for a second and just like giving an approach a chance is going to give you so much more information than ping-ponging around between all these things and then not getting anything out of any of them, and also not knowing how you were impacted by
you're
things.
like a buoy in the ocean in the middle of a storm getting battered around. Yeah,
and the same goes like it even with training. Like if you've never followed a program all the way through, you'll see how beneficial that would be. And I honestly don't care like what you choose to try something and stick with it for a little while and give that a chance, and you will probably have positive takeaways and negative takeaways. And that's how you actually learn what works best for you.
Yeah. Damn. So you're saying you got to commit and pay attention.
You got to. And it's like we have a lot of overstimulation happening, especially like on social media and stuff. So I think just try to focus in on something.
Nice. Emily, thank you so much for taking the trip out here, spending the day with me. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, Instagram is all I got. So handle is Dr. Emily Dow, DOW. I'm easy to find. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got. I'm there to kind of like talk shop at you about how things work with nutrition and exercise physiology to an extent. And that's pretty much all I'm there doing. I really don't have anything to promote. I really don't have anything to push. So
she's just doing it for the love of the fucking game, dude. Just like she did in Physics 2 AP.
For the love of the game.
For the love of the game.
For the
suffering. Shout out suffering. And being fully saturated.
Yes.
Emily, you're fucking awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Everybody who's made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Remember, subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, stay fully saturated, my friends.
Stay fully saturated.
Peace.